Hello everybody, and that's big. That shouldn't be big. That should be small. There we go. All right, we'll start again. Hello everybody, welcome to Melbourne CocoaHeads number 176, which is our traditional Beyond WWDC event for June. Obviously we've just had another WWDC come and go. Somewhat lackluster, depending on your opinion of Apple Intelligence, but I won't jump the gun. I'll let Pat talk to those sorts of bits. So in the spirit of reconciliation, Melbourne CocoaHeads wishes to pay our respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait people of Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. I'd also like to pay our respects, obviously, to their elders past, present and emerging. Big night tonight. As always, a traditional WWDC event. We have a bit of a recap in case you missed what's happened in the last couple of days. Pat will take us through that. Pat's making some noises. I hope he's going to take us through that. Sounds all right. Got a fantastic presentation from Keith, who's here from New Zealand specifically for tonight. Right, Keith? Flew all the way here just to present. Around brainfuck in the Swift type system. This is based on a forum post that you did as well, I think. Should be fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed the forum post for this one. And then, as always, we'll wrap up with a WWDC panel discussion to go through what we've all heard this week and see what people think, how people feel. As always, we conduct our events under a code of conduct. The short version is up there. Won't read through that for you. The usual shorter versions are, treat people the way you want to be treated, be respectful for everybody and their differences in cultures, technology choices, all of that sort of stuff. If you do have any concerns, feel free to grab myself or Pat or Tups, who's sitting in the middle there and trying to hide. If you prefer not to talk to someone directly, there are feedback forms on the website, which is there. And I believe we still have the anonymous feedback form working, though I haven't tested it in a couple of months, so that should still be working. So you can report anonymously if you prefer. A little bit of housekeeping for those in the room here. We mentioned it before, the toilets are back out past the elevators, turn right. If you get to V-line, please don't go to the toilet there. That's a little bit too far. This is the door before them. The emergency exit is back out that way as well. It's just before the toilets on the opposite side of the thing. Hopefully we don't need those ones. Some name tags. We ask everybody to wear name tags. It makes introductions easier, all of that sort of stuff. If you are new, I don't know if we had the blue dots out tonight. Did we have the blue dots out tonight? No, probably not. Normally we have blue dots for people who's its first time, but please just make everybody feel welcome, regardless of whether it's their first time or not, I guess. If you're looking for an organizer, we have the little CocoaHeads pins on our name badges. Again, myself and Pat, and I don't think Tups is wearing one, but whatever. You'll be fine. For questions, we generally prefer that we don't interrupt the presenter unless the presenter says it's okay. Hold off until the end to ask your questions, raise your hand and wait for a microphone to come around. For people watching online, welcome. Sorry I didn't address you directly before. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them directly in the chat on YouTube or in the Melbourne Meetup channel on Slack. If you haven't joined Slack, the details will be on the slide in a couple of little bits. We find this just generally helps the evening flow a bit better. It allows the online audience to participate as well. If you have questions, we'll keep an eye on the chat and I will relay them on your behalf. And that's it. Yep. I don't know how to put this slide in. I didn't put the stickers out either. We do have some stickers. I'll put them out and you can grab some stickers on the way out if you like. They're just the little CocoaHeads ones. They're normally out there. So we can't put these events on without the help and support of our sponsors. And our gold sponsor for this year is Mantle Group, who generously provide this space for us as well. And our silver sponsor for 2024 is REA Group, who make the real estate suite of apps as well. So big thank you to them. Thank you, Pat. It's not just this presentation night that we run every month. We run 3 events, sometimes 4 events a month, depending on how things go. One of our other ones is a coding night, which is back here again in the Mantle Group office on the 3rd Wednesday of the month, so next Wednesday, which is, I believe, the 19th. We usually get a date or two wrong on these slides, but I think that one's correct. We run the coding night in conjunction with GDG, so it's a cross-platform coding night. There's also the Flutter group is involved sometimes as well, and some web people sometimes show up. This is an all ages, family-friendly event. It's an alcohol-free event. We'll have the tables set up here, and you can bring your laptops. There's drinks and pizza, soft drinks, everything's there. Come along, it's a great night, especially if you want to come and play with Xcode 16, some of the new tools that were available. It's a great chance to collaborate and learn together all of the new stuff that just got dumped on us this week. We also run a social night. We used to run social night and coding night together, but everybody just gave up on the coding part and did the social part, so we split them out. Social night is on the last Tuesday of the month, which for this month is the 25th of June. Where did we say that was going to be? St. Rogue. The details will be on meetup.com for all of these events, as well as on our Slack. There is the Melbourne Social Night channel, which will always keep up to date with where the social events are and all of that sort of stuff as well. We aren't alone in the universe. We do work very closely with the Sydney CocoaHeads team, who are on usually the week after us, so they're next Thursday. And there are also other CocoaHeads groups all around the country and in New Zealand as well. You can check out the second link if you want to find the group that might be closer to you, or if you're traveling, go meet your peers in different communities. And as mentioned, we work closely with the GDG folk as well here in Melbourne, and they're on the bottom link there. How to find us, as we mentioned, we have a website. Everybody has a website. That used to be exciting, that's not exciting anymore. Most of our activity goes on Slack. We share a Slack instance with the other CocoaHeads groups across the country and New Zealand. You can grab the join using the QR code that's on the screen right now, or go to our website and there'll be a link for Slack, join Slack somewhere in the middle. There's a bunch of channels on there. Oh, we're also on Mastodon as well. We used to be on the Bird site, but we're not on the Bird site anymore. It's not even the Bird site anymore, is it? But the crap site, we're not on that one. So yeah, we are on Mastodon. We usually post announcements and events and all of that sort of stuff on there. But Slack is generally the best way to keep in touch with the community. There is about 12 to 1,500 people on there. It's been especially active this week, obviously, but there are a bunch of other specific topic channels that you can go to. So there's the Swift channel. There's AppKit channels for people who are still doing that sort of stuff. There's jobs channels, there's speakers channels. Finding speakers for these events is the hardest thing about putting the events on. So if you do have an idea for a topic, jump in the speakers channel. We're more than happy to provide mentoring or advice and help you through the process if you've never done it before. But you'll also find there's the Melbourne prefixed channels. Those are specific to us. So the Melbourne Meetup one is the one to ask any questions tonight if you're watching online. Melbourne Volunteers channel is where we organise stuff, and then there is Melbourne Coding Night and Melbourne Social Nights and a few other different Melbourne channels as well. Have I reached the end of my slide deck? I think I have. Yes, this is our lovely Pat, who is about to come up and tell us all about what happened at WWDC.
Hey everyone. The reason I made a noise before when he said I'll be recapping WWDC is because I thought it'd be more suitable for me to show a video of the recap, because they'd be able to recap it better than I can, because I'm still like watching the videos and stuff. But I will supplement with my thoughts and we'll go from there.
Pat will say words.
Sort of. But also the audience may say words if possible.
Yeah.
So yeah. I did. Yes, I wanted to do this.
It's showtime.
I just wanted to see his hair helmet again, so that was cool. Just before I go in, have people watched the keynote? Have they watched anything? Like, just a show of hands. Matt's seen it. Most people have seen it, right? Okay, cool. So me repeating that, I don't think would be too good. But we're going to show that short 18 clips thing, if everyone's cool with that. Okay, and then we discuss. Maybe. Just there. Now, the back and forth, I'm not going to ask everyone individually, but what that video reminded me of is how much I enjoyed this year. I know that might not be shared amongst everyone, but I did want to ask if anyone's got anything standouts, things they enjoyed. Anyone? Oh yeah? Oh, you were ready with it.
This is not my first time.
Yeah. Oh, Andy's got something.
The AI is pretty cool.
It is good. So that's one of my favorites as well. I feel like Siri's been lagging behind a little bit with the AI technology, so I'm happy she's getting a lift. Someone said calculator too, which I've got there's plenty at the back there if people have one. I just want to ask one thing about the calculator from an audience point of view. What do people think the next calculator is? Because every year that WW has been on that I've seen here, people would make a joke about the calculator coming out. And now I'm wondering what the next thing is that will be coming out. So just, you can, or do you know?
Better audio handling.
Better audio handling. That's the thing we're waiting for.
I mean, a lot of people are.
Okay.
So you don't.
It's for the.
Oh, right. So you don't. You can basically do similar audio handling on Mac, on iPad, and
Okay.
iPhone.
I'll look out for it, that's for sure.
I think it's too niche, unfortunately. They'll never.
But
do
you could
it.
have the DJ stuff on the iPad. That was always a fun thing to do, little mixing stuff.
Another one is testing on device on my Mac. So building to my device and then running it on my Mac with the mouse and all that kind of stuff is pretty sweet.
Testing on device on your Mac.
So you build from Xcode to the device, then use a Mac to mirror the thing, right? Is that?
Oh, as in the iPhone, the mirroring and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. There was at the back.
I was just gonna add to the calculator. I mean, I thought like it was really clever how they they talked about the calculator before any of the Apple Intelligence. Like it was so subtly embedded into the application. So for us developing it, just like makes us want to think like, what do we do with the app? It's just like rather than Siri taking over things. So it was just like I thought like the subtle use of AI, that's one, and the whole like what's exciting next. Like I think it'd be interesting to use more like the front-facing camera for gesture, better visual compute.
Nice.
We get excited about that.
Very cool. One more. Just
I'm looking forward to Xcode 16 and the Copilot that's going to come within the editor. I think it's about time that we have that, so I'm looking forward to that.
awesome. Right, good answers. Good answers. I had the calculator and Siri. Really excited about that stuff. My notes aren't up here actually, but I'm looking forward to the changes in Swift UI and the Swift testing. But the one thing that I was looking forward to is there's going to be a point where we're going to stream CocoaHeads in an immersive 3D experience, and I'm just looking forward to that milestone. No pressure.
I'm looking forward to people actually wanting that.
Would people
guess.
want that? Show of hands. Yeah. Yeah. We'll do that. So no, there's some cool stuff.
Sounds like Pat's shouting everybody a Vision Pro so they can watch CocoaHeads.
Well, they'll be cheap by then, right? So yeah, Vision Pro. I'm not sure if I mentioned in that, did it? Oh, so Vision Pro's released July 12th
No, it didn't mention it in that.
in Australia. So that was an exciting thing. More people might, purchase one here. What else? I wish I could see my slide notes. But there was one other thing. I'll get to it later. But yeah, so not the tinting of the icons. But yeah, for me, it was a really... so actually, one of the things that I really loved about WWDC this year is it just reminded me that it brings a lot of people together, like developers. It encourages discussion and stuff like that. And I think that often gets overlooked. So I think even just laughter and stuff like that with the video, it's all good stuff. Sense of humor. And that's where the session awards this year that I'll be giving out for best performance goes to Jake Petrolis from What's New in Xcode 16. So also these are recommendations. If you haven't watched these ones, I suggest you check them out. There's some good info in there. Best musical performance, which is What's New in Swift UI, Summer Panang. What is it? I think it's Panage. Perfect. And Sam Lazarus. And then best friends is Russell Ladd. So that's in Enhance Your UI Animations and Transitions. I've still got to watch more of the videos, but yeah, just to reiterate, the Swift testing, big change, and a lot of the patterns. So a lot of the like macros that they're introducing are starting to see the improvement in code bases and just like small little, I guess, quality of life changes. So yeah, that's my not quite recap of WWDC. Thank you. Okay. Oh. No, that's literally.
Hi, I'm Keith, but some people know me as One Said Cookie. If after the presentation you want to follow me on social media, that's how you do it on Mastodon. I fully expect that none of you will want to be associated with me at all after you've seen what I've got to say, but you know, it takes all types to make a world. I'm afraid Bok somewhat lied to you earlier. I'm not actually here to talk about what he said. I'm here to tell you how to write Hello World in Swift. It is an extremely advanced topic, and I hope that everyone will have a lot to learn today. So the first thing that we have to understand when we want to write Hello World in Swift is how we're going to manage text encoding, because we've got to output a string. This is not updating. Bok, my slide is not updating. There. Just does it. Oh, there we go. This time it's fine. So basically, in order to output a string, we're going to need to, it's equivalent to outputting a sequence of numbers. Hello world, we can output this sequence of numbers, and that will do the job. Now, we're programming Swift, and all of us know that the most important things in Swift are type safety and data modeling. So the first thing that I want to talk about is how we're going to represent these numbers that we need to output. Thankfully, where's this? Thankfully, we've got our old friend Piano and his axioms for the natural numbers to fall back on. And so we're going to define 0 as an empty structure conforming to the empty protocol nat. And then we have the successor function. You can think of successor as adding 1. So every natural number is either 0 or 1 more than another natural number. Here, the pred in the generic parameter of that successor type. So, for example, it's still really laggy. I need to press the next slide button about 10 seconds before it's required. I blame Apple. That's still the old frame. There we go. So here we can type alias 1 as the successor of 0, type alias 2 as the successor of 0, 3 as the successor of the successor of 0, and basically, as you can see, the bigger the number, the more the suck. Now I'm going to add a little convenience to this because ultimately we kind of do have to be able to see what we're doing. So I've made a static, of course the slide hasn't updated yet. I'm going to make, in several minutes, a static value property on the NAT protocol and implement that to return 0 for the 0 struct and implement that to return 1 plus the predecessor's value for the suck struct. Well, it's probably I'm probably doing it wrong at this end. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. I can go out of full screen. Yeah, maybe that's fine. Yeah, that's the same thing. Okay, now that we've got numbers, we move on to strings, and we can define strings in exactly the same way. So a little protocol, again with the static value. An empty string is just an empty struct that conforms to that protocol, and when we want to append a character onto a string, we do so by using our natural number for the character that we're adding and the prefix. And notice that this makes strings kind of backwards. The last character of the string is on the outside and the first character is on the inside. That's pretty convenient. So here's how you do it. A is ASCII 6, capital A is ASCII 65, capital H is a few beyond that, and I is a little beyond that, and then you can see that H and I are backward, and if I print out their value, I'll get high. Beautifully type safe, really, really difficult to mistake one string for another in this case. The compiler will just tell you, no, that is not the right string. But I think you'll agree with me that writing hello world like this is going to be terminally sucky, incomprehensibly sucky. So as we know, whenever we hit a problem where the language isn't quite expressive enough, we need to do some metaprogramming. So we need another language that's going to help us to program hello world more effectively. And I've chosen the well-known language brainfuck. I apologize to anyone who is offended by this word. I'm going to be saying it a lot. It's going to be on my slides a lot. If you do, put your hands over your eyes and ears if you're that. So brainfuck is a little esoteric language. It consists of 8 instructions, of which I'm only going to use 7. Those are represented by those little symbols. It has an instruction tape which can move left and right around the instruction pointer. And it has an infinite data tape full of zeros at the start, but each cell can hold an arbitrary number. Here, copied and pasted from Wikipedia, the actual instructions. So there is one to move the data pointer left and right along the data tape, one to increment and decrement the value on the data tape at the current data pointer, one to output the current cell on the data tape as a character, one to accept a byte of input, which we're going to ignore because we have no way to accept any input whatsoever, and then a pair of matched square brackets, which act as a kind of combination if and while loop. And this on the right, eventually, no, not eventually. Did my mouse pointer move? Yeah, I got to keep wiggling. Okay. So on the right is the Hello World program that is going to help us to generate Hello World in Swift. On the left is the same thing with comments. I hope that you all read that real quick because there will be a test after the show. So in order to use this metaprogramming technique, we're going to have to implement a brainfuck virtual machine in Swift. So first of all, I've got the memory tape, the data tape. This is represented in exactly the same ways as the numbers and the strings, except that it goes both directions. So I use 2 half tapes, one to the left, one to the right of the current head position. And a square, once again, has a natural number in the square, getting maximum use out of Peano's axioms. Then on the instruction tape, we need all the different instructions that you saw in the table from Wikipedia earlier. Wiggle. You'll notice I've added 2 protocols because loops are not simple, and a new instruction to represent the end of a sentinel at the ends of the instruction tape called exited, and that's what I'll use to know when my brainfuck program has finished. But otherwise, wiggle. The program tape is exactly the same as all the other things you've seen so far. It's either the end of the tape or it's an instruction and some more tape. And then, having done that, we can make the machine. So the machine consists of the data tape to the left, the value of the current cell, the data tape to the right, the program tape to the left, the instruction in the current program cell, and the program tape to the right. I'm not in this presentation going to talk about the state stack. That is a complicated thing to do with pulling while loops back to the beginning of the loop, and it's kind of not relevant to your enjoyment of this. But output is the values that have the string that has been output so far using that dot instruction. And the body of this contains a variety of subscripts, all of which look like this, basically. So I'm not going to go through all of them. That would be very boring. But here's one so you can see it, and I will explain later why it looks like this, because it certainly looks weird. But I'd like to draw your attention first to the middle block, where I've put the arrow pointing to the conditions of the current state of the machine. So the important one here is that this subscript only applies when program write has one more instruction and the program current instruction is increment. And then we see the next state of the machine, so it still has the same left and right of the tape, but it's used suck to add 1 to the current value on the tape. It has moved the current instruction off to the left of the program tape, and the next instruction into the current position, but the right of the program tape is bumped up, and we haven't changed the output or the state of the machine. And amusingly, this function just fatal errors. We are never going to call this function, and that is true of most of the functions in this program. And then there's 18 more of those, and I'm not going to show you them all. Wiggle. 18 more of those. I'm not going to show you, but I will give you a link to go where you can go get the code if you really want to see them all and all the details of how the while loop works. So let's talk about why it is that weird. And why it is that weird is that I need to use this dynamic member lookup feature of Swift. So dynamic member lookup is a feature which allows you to effectively use the properties on one type to define computed properties on another type. So here I've defined a struct A with a property A, which has the value 3 always, and a struct S with the dynamic member lookup attribute. And then I provide this subscript, which takes a key path from, in this case, that other simpler A struct and returning an integer. And then this property will return an integer. And the implementation is kind of unimportant. So when I do s.a down here at the bottom, I'm going to get 3. And the reason I'm going to get 3 is that the compiler is going to look for .a on my struct s, and it's not going to find it because it's not there. And so it's going to translate that .a, because it's got a dynamic member lookup attribute, it's going to translate that into a call to my dynamic member subscript. And it's going to turn that .a into a \.a, just a key path literal, and pass that to my function. So in this case, that's pretty simple. But we can also use it to infer the return type from the key path. So here, the only difference to the previous slide is I've added this generic t, which is then the return type of the key path and the return type of the property on this thing. So once again, we're still getting an int because the underlying property is just an int. But then things get interesting. So what if I have 2 dynamic member subscripts? This top one is the same as the previous one, but I've added a generic parameter to my struct with dynamic member lookup. This top one is the same as the other one, but only triggers where my generic parameter is integer. And then the bottom one triggers where the key path is to a particular specialization of myself, where the generic parameter is something else. So I can here construct an s of float, and I can still do s of a, and this will convert it, same as it always did, into a call to the dynamic member subscript, which is going to hit this one because g is float. But then it's going to find out that this key path literal, \.a, was actually a key path into s of int t. And then it's going to go look again recursively for another property, this time on s of int. And this time it's going to find the first overload, because now the key path is relative to a. So this allows me to force the compiler to recursively search through all these different properties at compile time. And that's why there were 18 of these subscripts, because there is one for each transition in the brainfuck state machine. And I'm going to use these preconditions in the dynamic member lookup to make it, when I go .output, it's going to go one step through the state machine, find that there's no output property, go another step through the state machine, find that there's no output property, go another step through the state machine, find that there's no output property, until we hit the case where the current instruction is that special sentinel exited instruction to say that we've come to the end of the program. And there I define the output property. This output is still fatal error. I'm not going to call this property, but that output is going to contain that string that we've built up through all the output instructions, through all the previous iterations of that stepping through the brainfuck program. And then there's a stupid little trick here, which allows me to infer the type of this of this associated type from an initializer of a static variable which never runs. So although this looks like I'm calling .output, so long as I never refer to this infer from variable, .output will never be called. But the type of this infer from variable is whatever the type of this .output property is. And then I can just print the type if anyone wants to see that, which they don't, and the value. So, beautiful. There's the setup. There's the Hello World program from earlier. Here is the machine type with all of those instructions converted to the Swift type system. And now I'm ready to go compile that, and I'm going to see this finally print Hello World. Wiggle. Well, Swift doesn't really like it when you put like two equal equals with an ampersand between them. So I guess I probably should have expected that this was like a bit too much. Okay. So what if I delve into the source and find some obscure compile time options that let me give all the time and memory in the world to the type checker? 4 gigs of RAM and 20,000 seconds. That should be plenty, right? Yeah, not so much. Well, so it turns out like in ASCII, uppercase letters have lower values than lowercase letters. So actually yelling reduces the amount of computation that I have to do. And also if I write something shorter like hi Swift instead of hello world, then it dramatically reduces the amount of computation that I have to do. So here's a program that's going to print hi Swift. And if I hit compile on this one, wiggle, 56.1 seconds later, compilation succeeds. This is actually slower in Xcode 16 because I ran it last night. It takes 67 seconds in Xcode 16. And we've got hi Swift. So, in conclusion, you now know how to write the world's worst hello world program. It takes nearly 4 gigabytes of memory and nearly 1 minute to compile on an M1 MacBook Pro. It doesn't even print hello world. But you do at least know that Swift's type system is Turing complete, which I didn't before I started this exercise. If you want the code, wiggle. That's the thread to go to. You'll find... No, please. You would have to be insane. I don't expect anyone wants this code. There it is, if you want it. And apparently that is the end of my presentation.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, show of hands who actually understood some of that. Got the high Swift bit? Yep.
What made you even like try to write this? What sparked your curiosity to get that far?
I accidentally created the dynamic member lookup device, trying to do something simpler. And I realized that when I accidentally used it to reverse one of those lists, like the natural numbers or the string. Pretend I accidentally reversed a string, which I'd been building for some entirely other reason. But I accidentally reversed a string, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that means that Swift's type system is Turing complete, which was not a fact that I knew at the time. I now know that some people did know that ahead of me. But as far as I know, like this was the first proof, like solid proof. People had hand waved and said, we're pretty sure. This was the first solid proof that the Swift type system is Turing complete. And it was also the first usage of that dynamic lookup device.
So you went on a mission to prove that it was true?
I hit that hunch, and then I was like, I have to get to the bottom of this. Yeah.
What was the reaction to your forum post?
Pretty good. People liked it. It's pretty niche content, honestly. Like,
we were still very desperate to get you to present about it here, though, because it is something nobody would ever think of normally. So, does anybody have any questions with Keith's laptop dying?
my laptop is apparently over.
Oh.
What practical use can you do with this?
So, what it proves is that anything is possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, whatever you thought you could, however you thought you could build an API to constrain uses to certain ways, like technically that is possible. Whether you can get that to compile in reasonable time is a totally different question. But like, if you were thinking you'd like to build a system that can't be misused in particular ways, you definitely have the power to do that. Practicalities are basically still eluding me at this point.
Is Swift's type system deliberately Turing complete?
I don't believe so. I think that they intended to keep it from being Turing complete, if anything. Like, there are other formulations of Turing completeness. You do not require the dynamic lookup device in order to get Turing completeness.
Are there other programming language type systems that are known to be Turing complete?
Yes, lots of them. C++ is, Rust is, TypeScript is. So it's pretty common for the more expressive programming languages to have Turing complete type systems. Turing completeness also turns up in all sorts of other places, like Magic the Gathering is Turing complete, PDF is Turing complete. It crops up in all sorts of places you don't necessarily expect.
Are there any other even more esoteric languages that you'd like to work with?
Brainfuck was complicated enough, thank you. Malbolge holds a special place in my heart, but I don't think anyone's written Hello World at all in Malbolge yet. So, yeah, that is a self-modifying. It's similar to Brainfuck, but it's self-modifying. So every instruction that you run actually modifies the program itself. So you kind of, very difficult to predict what the rest of the program is going to do. Any more?
Just checking if there's anybody online. No, don't do that. No questions online. Maybe a suggestion for Lisp, but yeah.
I'll keep it in mind.
Cool. Thank you very much, Keith.
Thank you.
This button, and we hope everything works. And I am cut off. I'll shove down a little bit. All right, that's good enough. All right, thank you, everybody. We've come to the last bit of tonight. Big thank you to Keith for running us through that. I'm sure it's one we will never, ever forget. And we may not be able to forget it, I think is probably the thing. Something you didn't even know to think was possible. It is possible. And that's always good to find out. So we've got a few panelists here tonight just to chat through what's happened with WWDC. We'll go down the line and get you guys to introduce yourselves a little bit about yourself. Doesn't have to be too in-depth. Pablo, do you want to start with you?
So I'm a iOS developer and I work for ANZ. So yeah.
I just realized we have an all ANZ panel by accident. Sorry, that wasn't supposed to happen. Well, it's one of those ones where you reach for people you know that are nearby when you're looking for volunteers. Jane?
Yeah, apparently I'm an international guest here. I'm from New Zealand. I also work for ANZ.
And Andy?
I am an iOS engineer. I mainly work on infra at ANZ.
And for those that don't know me, most people call me Bok, but I also work at ANZ. So yeah, entirely by accident, I promise. It really was. All right.
Also hiring. Well, no, I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah.
Just like, are we? I'm sure we are at the moment. Anyway, WWDC is what we're here to talk about, not talk about ANZ. I'm going to go straight to the spicy topic. What do we think of Apple Intelligence, whether it be the name or what they're building? And we'll go backwards. So we'll start with you, Andy.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a game changer. More in the sense of like how FaceTime was kind of a game changer for video calling, right? Like, yes, Discord did it, a whole bunch of other services did it, but like Apple has the ability to normalize these types of technologies and make it, or put it in the hands of the everyday people instead of just the tech people or the gamers or whomever. So I think it's going to be pretty great if they can sort of pull it off.
Jane, what do you think?
Well, I loved it, and the name wasn't too on the nose as well. I mean, it was like a play of the letters, obviously, but they nailed it pretty great. I love the Genmoji and the generative part of this to express themselves. Like, I'm a huge emoji fan. Like, I use them everywhere. Everyone who has ever received a text from me, like, have seen at least a dozen of emojis. So I think this is gonna be really cool. And the bit where you can just delete people from the photos, that was my favorite bit. I think I probably rather expressed my love to this feature way too loudly when we were watching the WWDC keynote session.
And Pablo?
So the name itself, I don't like it so much, but I think the actual what it is, I think is very interesting. There's been a lot of talks that Apple is really behind AI and machine learning, and it's a little bit maybe not so true, because they tons of stuff that they have is being used in machine learning, but maybe not to the point that maybe some other companies were trying to bring in, like Google and Microsoft. I quite like the way the approach they're taking in terms of running like a very thin layer locally. Then if they can resolve it, jump into the private cloud. I think that's a very interesting approach. Yeah.
Nice. I think that's kind of nailed it, right? They were very moderate in their language until they made the Apple Intelligence announcement. Like, if it was machine learning, they called it machine learning. They didn't hype it up and pretend it was something else.
They never actually say AI. They say neural networks, they say machine learning, they never say AI.
They let you make that inference.
Yes. Yeah.
But for those who couldn't hear that was Siri answering.
It's creepy.
It's a little bit creepy. So I think we liked the name in general. Was the consensus? Or the way they've approached it? No?
Name's terrible.
Name's terrible?
Like, if I want to search for Apple Intelligence stuff, I have to say App Intel or Apple Intelligence. Is too long. I feel like they could have abbreviated it, but that's
the brand. I mean, the notch on the iPhone 10, or rather, was it like a series of those devices? Was it terrible? Like, there was on the market, there are already devices with no call out for the camera, no notches, nothing, just a plain screen. They didn't go for it because it was not as easily recognizable, and they did the same for Apple Intelligence. They are just producing branding their thing.
Yeah.
So I think for the product, for the company, that is a good thing. I mean, maybe not so easy to pronounce for us, and probably going to be some confusion between AI as in like a thing, like a general set of products, and then the Apple Intelligence going to stand out of there. So it's good for them as a company. So I think they did like a brilliant decision on that.
Do we think they did that confusing the part around the word search term AI on purpose?
Phil Schiller, I don't know. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be hard to sort of Google stuff when it's like typing in AI when I mean Apple Intelligence, but once
Just use
again,
Safari,
it's
it'll probably put it at the top.
yeah, exactly right. So
They're just going to replace it for you.
we'll see. I'm not a fan of the name, but it's good in the sense it's like it's branding. It's going to stick.
All right, so we'll move on from Apple Intelligence for the time being. Were there any other highlights for the three of you? I mean, the non-Apple Intelligence, Pablo?
For me, definitely the new testing system approach. I think that's a really good one, and it's great because a lot of companies, it's very hard to get to start implementing the latest of, let's say, Swift UI, or maybe migrate straight away to Swift 6. But testing it will be, I would say, a lot easier to approach because you can start gradually migrating tests once you have Xcode 16.
I think test files are also going to be much shorter because now you have the arguments. You can sort of like say like, hey, instead of me writing 5 or n functions, I can just put all these arguments in, and then that's going to be a time saver. And Swiftlin's going to be pretty happy with that too.
And it's going to be so much better for the project that are yet to adopt testing, because it's so easy now and so fun to write tests. There's like nothing stopping you anymore. You can just create a file and start doing that. It's a great point about early adoption, because usually we don't get to play with those shiny things until we already forgot they existed. But for the testing, it's the bit that we are provided like right now, so we can start working with that. And this is probably going to be driving for teams who are yet to adopt testing, or just like maybe improve the test coverage. So this is going to be like a moving thing. Hands down, testing was the greatest for me as well.
Yeah, to me also the readability, like being able to assign readable names to the tests and all of what it is, the tagging system, it's pretty powerful.
I think universally Swift testing at our company was the favorite.
Yeah.
And you can actually adopt it now. It's possible to do that. You don't have to wait for Xcode 16. Although obviously you don't get the IDE integration with that. But you can, it does work. Aside from, so we talked about Swift testing, was there any other standout items, Jane? Put you on the spot.
Yeah, I feel obliged
Doesn't
to
have
say
doesn't have to
Swift
be
UI.
big. Could be small.
Yeah. Well, they did have a few improvements on the Swift UI side of things. Nothing to I've seen so far was like impossible before, but it was achievable with much more friction. But simplifying that for developers is basically the general direction that we want to see from the company.
So no big new things, just made things polished and easier.
Which is all itself is a good and big thing.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I think in general, quality of life for Swift UI has been a great improvement. It's been evolving since 2019, and getting more and more sort of a approach to what you could do with UI Kit, and yeah, I think it's getting into a really good place now.
I don't have comments on Swift UI, but I do like SF Symbols 6. I think that's pretty cool. It's helping people or developers make apps and glyphs delightful. I think Apple's sort of going in that way. They've been trying to do some weird stuff since iOS 7 first came out, but now you can see in their design systems they're starting to get a little bit more bold. Like the action button setup, whatever. It's completely different. Yeah. I think SF Simple 6 since you took Swift testing. Yeah.
You can share favorites. There's no rules here.
Nah, I'm going to be original.
Was there anything that we were hoping for that we didn't get?
Mac OS on iPad. Like you'd release this like M4 amazingly powerful device, and then the best we get is a calculator, which is great. But I want be able to dock my iPad and have like Mac OS run there and there. It would justify the $3,500 whatever the dollar price tag for the full kit. But that's my biggest letdown.
Pablo?
I was just trying to think. I had hopes for the iPad OS become a little bit better. Maybe I don't know if Mac OS is right away, but maybe a better Xcode playgrounds, like where you could do a little bit more stuff that you can do today. It's kind of like a good thing if you go on the train, not taking a laptop and being able to do some development work on that. So yeah, I was kind of hoping for that.
Imagine compiling brain fart on iPad playgrounds.
It might be faster actually than the M1 Pros that we had. Was there a question from the audience, Alex? Okay. The comment from the audience was the lack of updates to the communication between extensions and the main app. That's still just as painful as it's always been. Yeah. Jane, did you have something more?
Well, I'm honestly still waiting till they would present something that would make an iPad or Vision Pro, like to make it want to buy it. So like I used to own an iPad. It was just like it was my first iOS device actually, way before I started to use an iPhone. And back then, when you don't have an alternative to Apple ecosystem, that was fun. You could play games that were only available on iOS using some apps and stuff. Now everything is on iPhone, and I'm just still waiting for something breakthrough, for like, well, this is done for iPad. You can just use that because it's kind of like a middle device for like between the Mac that I can carry. It's almost as light if you're having like an MacBook Air. And the phone that is like much more easier to carry in your pocket. So like every year I'm hoping for them to give me something, and they were like, well, here's a calculator, and here's like using your like equation stuff, which is already exist in other apps. Like Microsoft has Math Solver, for example. It's nothing new. That was already on the table. So it's same actually for Vision Pro. Last year they showed a few interesting things, like you can watch a movie. Well, yes, you can. They created a tabletop kit, also great, but it's gonna be pretty expensive D&D session, like 42K right there. Also not extremely usable. So I'm just waiting for something more consumer related, consumer focused. So something that people can actually relate with.
Yeah, I think that was the surprise for me, was the updates for Vision OS 2 were so minor to be basically non-existent, right? And it went from being this all, like last year's WWDC was all about that, and this year's WWDC is like, oh yeah, it's still a thing.
It's only been 4 months though, right?
It's true.
Yeah.
It kind of, so something that I've been thinking, kind of feels like they've been all hands on deck trying to get on with the Apple Intelligence stuff, because I've seen less content than previous years. The previous years there was a lot of other content, like good things about, I can't remember, but there were a lot of, I feels like there were more sessions and more content on the OSs.
Yeah, I think aside from the Apple content, the Apple Intelligence content, it does seem to be a pretty light on. Yeah. I skipped over, I didn't say my favorite one before, but my favorite for this year is actually not in any of the sessions. It's the 3 items in the release notes that say internal inconsistency errors. The fake build errors now gone. And what was the third one? There was a third one.
Explicit module.
I know that's a good one too. But there was another three big bug fixes in Xcode 16 that have plagued our team for 2 years now. Oh, Swift build plugins may actually work now.
I wish they would deliver.
Do I believe it? Says the wag in the audience. No, we'll wait and see. But the fact that they've acknowledged it is better than we've had in previous years.
I wish they would deliver the proper error, like description on the Swift UI body function, because that's still a nightmare sometimes when you're missing something or just forgot to place a dot between in front of the function, and they're just like, I don't know what you're saying. The error message would be so random, and then you need to copy all the code out of this body function just to make sense of it.
Yeah, the big. Yeah, this is that. So from the audience again, optimism that maybe now that Apple's actually using it internally, they might realize just how unusable it has been.
I would call it careful optimism.
Yeah, cautious optimism, absolutely.
Yeah, well, they should be starting to run into all the stuff that we normally run into. So, for example, a good example is the Photos app. I think it'd be interesting to see what they come up with next year in terms of collection views and stuff like that.
What do we normally go with from this point? Question: is anybody running the betas yet from from our panel members?
I am running it on my iPad.
One danger averse person.
I need to get to my own laptop so I could run it.
That's fair. How are you finding the beta so far?
It's pretty stable, I'd say. I haven't run into, I haven't put it on the phone. You tend to notice more of the, bugs because you use it a lot more. But yeah, on the iPad, it seems to be pretty stable in general.
Is that just because the Apple Intelligence stuff isn't enabled yet and there's not much without it?
Maybe, yeah. I think, yeah. Yeah, this is basically the icons, colors, and yeah. I don't think there have been big changes, as I was saying before. It's just minor subtle changes.
Anybody else planning? How many people in the room have run it already or are planning to install the beta? It's about 10%, 5 or so. Yeah. 6? Never the first beta. Yeah, I've been burnt too many times by that. I'll wait for the first public one, which is normally beta 2. I think there's also beta 1 gets cut very early, doesn't it? And then beta 2 is normally a fast follow from that. So hopefully next week or the week after I might take the plunge, but not on anything I use for work, obviously, because it's not reliable. Does anybody else from the audience have any questions? Got a hand down the back? So how are we thinking about SiriKit? Not strictly in a work sense, because that would be under NDA. But do you have any vision for what SiriKit might be used for?
That ties in with Apple Intelligence, right? Because it's using SiriKit APIs to sort of do the intents and whatnot. I mean, I was saying this last year. It feels like being iOS developers gets tougher and tougher each year. You have to build more and more stuff. You can't really just build an app that pulls in some JSON and makes that JSON pretty. Now you have to have SiriKit. Now you have to have widgets. I mean, I have high hopes for it, but I had a friend I knew a person who worked on SiriKit, and they didn't really have much positive things to say at that time. I'm not sure if it's still a thing or not, but I have high hopes. I think it's going to be really powerful. But then again, you sort of have to anticipate what your user wants, all these edge cases, and I'm curious to see how people flesh that out in their own apps.
I wouldn't think that prettifying JSON is all that other developers do, to be fair.
This is going back to iOS 5 and 6, yeah.
I was working as a React developer for a year and a half, involuntarily, but it's a different story. And it's just as much of a learning curve. I just felt obliged to defend this role of other developers as well. But as for Siri and integration to the app, that's usually for a lot of the companies would be a low-hanging fruit to create something like a tiny shortcuts from to go to your app. Like I was working on Letterboxd, and all of the shortcuts that are there still exist. All was done by me. They haven't edited anymore. Not sure why. But it's pretty fun to work with. I just love this technology in general, and I still how do you call it? Like creating my own idea for this, for like to make use of Siri and app intents and shortcuts all combined. So I love this technology in general. So I might be biased, but I think it's really useful and should be adopted in as many apps. I mean, where possible and sensible.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jane. I think it offers a lot of possibilities of exposing little piece of your app. I think nowadays it's kind of difficult to develop an app and get engagement to the users with the app itself. You sort of need to expose bits of it, like with widgets and app extensions, and or app intents, shortcuts, etc. I think it sort of provides that new way of trying to get people using your app. But it really depends on the kind of apps that you are, looking to develop.
Well, this is exactly the guy from the WWDC video, what introducing app intents did. Like he showcased how you can go further with your app functionality and not just make it work with shortcuts, but rather enhance the user experience for more difficult cases, and how to basically highlight your app every time you as a developer think that your app can solve users' problem. Basically put it right there. So like I can do that for you. Use me. It's great.
I think year on year, Apple's investment in app intents as the core for expanding your app outside the app box is showing. And I think with the with Apple Intelligence, that's probably going to aid discovery more than anything. Because if you're just asking Siri for something else and it just happens to know that you have app intents in that area, maybe that'll do that way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how they all like thought of this of this whole thing, and this Apple Intelligence that it decided like now we're ready. We have given you all the bits and pieces to integrate your app within this new ecosystem that we have provided for you. Like, so here's the Siri, and she will like do that for you if you want, if you let her to. And it years before that, it was just building this incrementally for developers to adopt. Like you can just do this with your app, like feed that bit to Siri, and then you can do more, you can do slightly more, and then the next year, like fourth or whatever, and you can just like, hey, you already done all of that. You can just may as well, like he was showing, just teeny tiny bits of code here and there, because you already have all of that. Now you can just connect this, just like a final collect to this intelligence.
Yeah, what I find really cool about that is you can actually, as you were saying, reuse a lot. So a lot of the stuff, for example, that I done for widgets, using those app intents, and those little pieces, you can now expose them and use them for different stuff. So I like the approach that they've taken to allow to reuse the code that you're writing.
Fletch, question? So comment from the audience is that the natural language recognition input is still probably the bottleneck for a lot of this sort of stuff, because Siri just can't understand you. Maybe Siri is now Apple Intelligent. I don't know. Well, properly Apple Intelligent and usable.
Oh, I have a tiny comment on that. You probably have noticed the accent, so I don't hold my breath on Siri understanding what I say.
That would speak to a lot of people in this room, probably, I think. Alex, question? they'd have to bring the complexity cost of a large language model down significantly to get it into the phone. But the first point of that, the comment from the audience was the ease of creating app intents has got a whole lot better. I personally didn't realize that they'd moved away from the XML files to actually doing code last year. I missed that one, so that's very helpful. Jason. Question from the audience. The Apple ecosystem moves quickly. Should we be all learning PyTorch and create ML now, do we think? Is that where the future's going? Do we going to need to be able to do that to deliver features?
I feel like if Apple do it, they're going to do their own little spin on it. I'm pretty sure Chris Latner is now working on PyTorch, right?
Somewhere on the Python side of the fence, yeah.
Yeah, but he's also doing some Swift stuff with that. But like, I don't know. I feel like
he was driving Swift's Python integration at one point. Or
yeah.
Interoperability.
I think, I don't know. I feel like if Apple do it, they're going to have Swift on it somehow. You know, even like a small layer or something like that. But who knows?
I think that would largely depend on the model that you need. And what you actually want to try to achieve that. So if the model is specific to your particular needs, that would be very difficult to find in other already trained models, then probably yes, but this is the large investment, because you're going to need a lot of data to train those models, and probably the effort might not worth it, again, depending on the needs of a particular app.
And I think you're also targeting a customer base that has an iPhone 15 Plus, right? So that's significant part of the customer base that can't run anything Apple Intelligence related because it's just not fast enough. Yeah, from the audience, do you need PyTorch for that? I guess the answer is no. CreateML supports a bunch of different things. PyTorch was just the example they used, and I think you meant in the general sense, right? Should we be all learning to create our own models now? And I think if you've done any work in the cloud computing space for the last couple of years, that's all they've been talking about, is training their own models and the tools available for doing that. So there are a lot more cloud services for creating and training models available. AWS does a bunch, Google does a bunch. Whether they can be used with CreateML and run on device, don't know.
It can't hurt. Learning PyTorch just can't hurt.
I think it's just broadly available and known for like doing exactly that. So if people would be willing to learn how to do that, or like need to have it to do that, they would probably end up Googling something and basically doing Python, because that's just broadly available.
Yeah, and also a lot of the pre-canned sort of examples and projects, they all come with PyTorch. So yeah, it's kind of like the path of less resistance.
And more tools in your toolkit is always a good thing. Anybody have one last question from the audience before we wrap up? Yep. The question was around the security risk involving app intents and trusting the system with your data. What do we think?
I think you always, it really depends on what your app does, right? Of course, any sort of a sensitive data or anything that you sort of require authentication is probably outside of scope. It's always being able to sort of prepare some pre-processed data, maybe running some sort of a background task in your main app, having something pre-digested and expose it through then an extension, right? And in terms of the app intents that execute actions would actually go into the main app. I think, yeah, normally just very simple tasks.
I wouldn't do any tasks that are related with people's data, identifiable data, etc. Normally, if your app doesn't have any personal information, that's probably safe, depending on what your app is doing. I have an app that is just a board game counter, basically. It doesn't have any information. It doesn't even have the login credentials. So I'm pretty sure it's safe to feed all I have to Siri, because like I don't mind, right? It's just a board game score. I mean, it might be sensible for some people. Not for me. I usually win. Yeah.
When you say security concerns, like what examples? Yeah, I mean, in scenarios like that, like I don't have much experience with app extensions or intents and whatnot, but like I feel the review process would weed out a lot of those things, as well as, you know, you can't really build a successful app if it's known to steal PII. You know, like once word gets out, like something weird happened in this app when I copied a PDF, it's going to kill the app, and word will just sort of spread. And I feel like Apple will sort of take it down. So technology-wise, I can't really comment much on, but like the process-wise, I think iOS users or Apple users are pretty safely guarded against that for the most scenarios. Yeah.
To be fair, you unknowingly already share a lot of information with third parties using social media, logging into different apps and stuff like that. So I wouldn't trust any of those apps, especially if you ever read the terms and conditions. So I would be trusting Apple just a tiny bit more than I would trust Google or Meta, for example.
So the scenario question was around malicious apps installed on the user's device being able to harvest data with app intents. I think unless you're in a very specific type of industry or handling very specific kind of data, there's a very good chance that the user's email inbox is going to have way more personal information about them than you will ever hold. And in general, people tend to trust their devices with a whole bunch of stuff, right? But that said, every company has a different approach, different feelings about it. And if you're writing your own indie apps, you will either trust the system or you won't. And you can always wait for user feedback too before you adopt that sort of stuff. Pete, last question. Comment then. Pete will complain at the pub. All right, cool. Favorite Apple TV series?
Hands down, Severance.
So you're excited for Severance season 2?
Yes. Very much excited.
During the pandemic, I read Dark Matter, and it's on Apple TV right now. I think I watched episode 7 of 9 last night. It's getting really, really good. So if you like multiversal stories, Dark Matter is a pretty good one.
Yeah, you two took the ones that I like.
You took his Swift testing, so I think that's
yeah,
fair.
It's fair. Okay. What's the one? Slow Horses. I like that one quite a bit.
No one wants to mention Morning Show. That was also quite good. I was hooked up.
You had your chance.
You can have more than one favorite. It's fine. All right. Well, in the interest of time, because we're coming up on 8 o'clock now, we'll wrap up there. Thank you very much for the three of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right, hello, me again. I moved to the middle of the room. I'm going to slide one more over so I'm in front of the camera instead of off to the left. Let's wrap up quickly. Where's my shrink button? Here we go. All right, so just a reminder, the next event is next week on the Wednesday night. That is our coding night, which we run in conjunction with GDG. Sorry guys, can we keep it down, please? After that, we have our social nights on the last Tuesday of the month. That is at Saint and Rogue, which is somewhere in the city. I can't remember. That's usually a pretty good one. Little Collins Street. Yeah. Little Collins near Southern Cross. Thank you, Tups. A big thank you to our speaker tonight, Keith. Thank you very much. And to our panelists, Pablo, Jane, and Andy. Someone applauded. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Pablo. A big thank you as well to our sponsors, Mental Group, and to REA. As always, we can't put these events on without their help. Normally, we head now to a venue just up the road, the Mitre Tavern. If you haven't been there before, just follow the crowd if you want to come along. And that's it. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next month.